Hello and welcome to Automation and Testing Daily Lockdown Questions. For the rest of the duration of the UK lockdown, I said I would answer the community's automation questions, so let's get right into this one. So today's question came in via the Ministry of Testing Club. Ketan is asking, is it a good approach in API testing to deserialize the API response into a POJO and compare the expected object with the resulted object? Or can I use a third party like approval test to verify the entire response body? Now, I have an answer for this immediately, but I'm not going to share it because my first thought when reading this question was, why are you checking the whole of the response body? And I'm sure there is genuine reasons when you would want to do this, and there is a good approach to do that. But I thought let's actually have a start by quickly looking at how we get to these decisions of doing things like checking certain values or checking the whole API response. And the way that happens is obviously through automated checks, but we start with a risk. So my question first, my suggestion first to Ketan would be, what is your risk? What are you trying to mitigate against? Because if you're interested in the values, then that would make sense to use an object. If you're interested in the order of the values and all the data that goes with them, then maybe approval would work. But do you really care about the order of a JSON object? Probably not. So therefore, we need to think about your risk. What is your risk? Make sure it's very clear what your risk is. And then off the back of that, we will design an oracle. So oracle is how something we implement. It's how we know if there's a problem here. So when we talk about them in the context of automated checks, we talk about them as assertions or approvals or something that basically says, take this and compare it to this and tell me if it's different. If it's different, I want to know because there might be a problem here. So we design an oracle, and then that's what usually defines our tooling. Once you've defined what your oracle is, your tooling is usually straightforward. Am I just checking a string? I'll probably just use something like JUnit or NUnit. Am I interested in an image comparison? Maybe I'll go down the route of using something like Applitools. Am I interested in the HTML? Whatever it may be, once you've worked out what it is you're interested in, the tooling usually follows. So then we implement that as a check, and then our check runs and it mitigates the risk or draws our attention to when maybe we aren't mitigating that risk. So yeah, the reason I'm bringing this up, Ketan, is really make sure you know what your risk is, because usually that will answer your tooling question. But to go into a bit more specifically about your exact question, I think there's a few options you have. So we'll start on the left. We have the option of doing a contract. So are you interested in the values, the exact values that are in the object, or are you just interested in the fact that the schema, the structure of the response is valid, that there is a field called name and there is an integer called ID? Do you care about that? If you care about that and not the specific values, something like contract testing is probably more appropriate for your current need. But then we could move on to the second one, sum values. So do you specifically care about sum values? I know, again, you've asked a very specific question, but it's helping you when you reassess your risk. If you care about sum values, then obviously you're going to need to parse to an object to then be able to query those specific values. So in this instance, I only care about automation and I only care about the word testing. So therefore, I'm going to parse it and I'm going to use some generic assertion library. Or, as per your question, the whole response. Now, I really struggle to find a use case where I'd want to do the exact whole response. And there's a few things for that. It's a bit like doing a big UI test. You're covering a lot. Now, yes, some APIs are small, but some APIs are massive. The responses are massive. So I can't think of a time myself where I've wanted to do everything in an API response. But if I did, would I use objects or would I use approvals? I would personally, to be very clear from the beginning, before we get into that, both would work. So let's be clear about that. Both would work, but there's advantages and disadvantages. So for me personally, I would go with an object. The reason I'd go with an object is approvals would care about the order of the JSON. and the order of the JSON can change. A lot of things can change. You alter a few lines of code as that response is built. The JSON's going to be in a different order, but the functionality hasn't changed. It still works, but the JSON's in a different order, and as we know about JSON objects, the order doesn't matter. So therefore, you'd have to update your approval for something that actually isn't an issue. And it's not just you'd have to update it, it's going to fail. You're going to have to investigate it, you're going to have to debug it, and that takes time. So there's a risk of that happening, which would make me, in this instance, favour the object. An object would make it easier if I wanted to change my oracle. So let's say there's a value that keeps failing. I've gone down the oracle route, or I've gone down the approval route, object route or approval route, and there's a value that's always changing. No one cares, no one uses it. It don't even know why it's in the API, but it is. But I don't want to check it anymore. The object would allow me to now change my oracle and go from doing a direct object comparison to potentially removing that from the list of data and then doing my comparison. So I'd get more flexibility with an object. But then finally, in most of my automated suites, I have a set of POJOs, a set of objects that are used to help me create data in our system. So most of the time, I already have them in place. A lot of reason why people don't like this is, it takes so long to create POJOs. It doesn't. The IDEs will help you do it, but also when you've done it for something, it's usually valuable for somewhere else, such as creating data in your system. So yeah, I would do an object. As I said though, both do work, but I would worry that you'd get false positives. White space could be an issue. The order of the object, the order of the properties could be an issue. So yeah, for me, I would go down the object route. If you are going to go down approval route, controllability is key for you. You need to be able to control the order of those objects, those properties, as well as all the values that come back. If you can control that, you might get good value out of approvals, but I'd write an object. So there we go. Thank you all for watching. If you have a question that you would like to get answered, lockdown has just been extended by 3 weeks in the UK, and I imagine it will get extended again. But if you do have a question, ideally please post it on the club, and you'll find the URL underneath wherever you're watching this. And if you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. But yeah, cheers for watching. Bye.